Beautiful people, sorry for the delay in our start this morning. I apologize. For some reason, Facebook Live just didn't like my browser this morning, and I'm just going to switch that off through my phone. Anyway, I really apologize for the late start. It's our first live, and I was late. But anyway, hopefully this is the beginning of this never happening to me again. All right, so let's get started with today. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to share a little bit with you guys about these lives, a little bit of housekeeping, what these lives are all about, and then we will go from there. And I hope that you're going to find it all super, super interesting. All right, I'm just going to pull up everything that I've got here and be ready. All right, so this is the first session of our Make It on Mondays weekly workshop. And what these sessions are, they are sessions that we are going to be running live, Amy and I, and we're going to be running them on Mondays at 12 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And we're going to be sharing different topics each week. And it's really for you guys to be enriched with knowledge. It's for you guys to hear from us on topics that you want to hear about. So I would love for you guys to be able to say to us, I really want to hear about this, I want to hear more about that, I want to hear more about research or ovulation or whatever it is that you guys want to know about. You guys need to let us know. We're going to talk about those each week. And the beautiful thing is that these sessions will be live. They'll be interactive. You can ask questions if you want to. We'll just keep checking any questions or any comments that that are there from time to time. But you can also watch them if you can't make it live. You can also watch them as a recording, which is fantastic, and they'll be there for you, for the whole week. So I'm just going to introduce myself. For those of you that don't know, my name is Louise Jeffrey. I'm an acupuncturist, and I'm a practitioner of Chinese medicine. I'm also a coach, and I'm a hypnotherapist, and I share my time between my own private clinic in the North Shore and the amazing acupuncture pregnancy clinic in the Sydney CBD and the eastern suburbs. Now, our lovely Amy Forth, who you're going to meet on the live next week, is also an acupuncturist, and she's also a practitioner of Chinese medicine, but she's also the director of our Alexandria clinic here in Sydney. And I'm not going to go into too much more detail about Amy right now because she's going to introduce herself to you next week on the live. But you'll be hearing more from both of us on a weekly basis, sometimes on a daily basis. And I want you guys to know that we're here to help you. And we're here to support you. So please feel free to reach out if you have any questions at all, any questions about the group or any questions about the live or about any topic. So these lives will be every Monday for around 20 to 40 minutes in duration. And what we hope is that you guys will kind of really get interactive, that you'll ask questions, that you'll comment, whether you're on the live session or whether you're watching afterwards, it doesn't matter, so that we can all learn and we can engage in conversation. So if you are live with us today, if you're actually on this live, I would love to hear from you. I'd love to know. And I'm just going to go and check the comments box. And now it's telling me that there is some issues with my internet connection. I hope not. I hope you guys can hear me. All right. So if you guys are here, hi Diane. Beautiful to know that you're on here. And Diana said she'd love to know more about diet, namely gluten and dairy free to aid fertility and prep for an IVF cycle, and whether decaf coffee is okay. Okay, we're definitely going to talk about that today, Diane, when we talk about diet. We're going to go into that for sure. Really, really happy to have you on. All right, so let's start today's session. And I'm just going to make sure I've got everything up that I need. We are going to talk about 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility. Now, I'm hoping that we'll be off this in about 20 minutes. And as I say, if you've got any questions, just let us know. We're going to talk about 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility. And we're going to talk about diet. We're going to talk about various different things. And I'm going to answer any questions that you have. So what do we know about preconception? And what do we know about how long it takes to prepare our bodies before we try to conceive? Well, what we obviously want, is to help your body to produce the healthiest eggs and the healthiest sperm possible. So in a woman, we know that it takes approximately 100 days for the egg to develop towards ovulation. And in the man, we know that it's approximately 116 days for sperm production to be completed. So with that in mind, if we want to positively impact our fertility, then we can proactively utilize approximately around 120 days or 4 months before we conceive to get our bodies ready. Now, obviously not all of us have 4 months to wait, but whatever we start doing now is going to positively impact not only our own health, but our chances of conceiving and obviously the health of the baby. So we're looking at around 4 months if we have that time available. If not, we just get started straight away on some really positive things that can make a big difference. Now, although the focus is often on women in fertility issues, the reality actually is that men pretty much share around 50% of the responsibility in the creation of a healthy embryo. Obviously, they share 50% of the responsibility in the act of conception, for sure. But in the creation of a healthy embryo, we tend to always think that it's about the eggs, but it's very much about the sperm as well in the creation of the healthy embryo. So what can both partners do? Those partners who are physically involved in conception, what can they do to positively impact their own fertility and the health of their baby? And this is where we're going to be talking about these 6 things that you can do that will really help to optimize your fertility and the health of your baby. So number 1, we're going to talk about diet. And we're going to talk about the number 1 thing really is to eat clean and to eat whole. Now we know that optimal nutrition provides an optimal ovarian environment for the egg during this kind of critical maturation process. And when we're looking for optimal nutrition, we talk about eating clean and eating whole and eating organic. So what do I mean by this? Well, I'm going to share some tips with you to kind of give you an idea of what I mean by eating clean, eating whole, and eating organic. The first thing to do really is to make sure, and we really want to keep this simple when we're talking about diet. The first thing really is to pick whole fiber-rich foods. And what I mean by this is to pick foods that are unprocessed and that are free from pesticides, from hormones, from preservatives and additives. So when we're eating whole foods, when we're eating foods that are in their natural form, right, that haven't been processed, they're going to naturally be fiber rich. Okay, and what we want is we want to pick foods that are unprocessed, that are pesticide free, hormone free, preservative free, and additive free. In other words, when they are pesticide free and hormone free, etc., they're going to be organic. And why should we choose organic where we can? Right? Why is it important to do so? Because what we know is that pesticides can really affect the delicate balance of reproductive hormones, and they can affect male sperm production. Now, obviously, it's not possible for all of us to eat organic or pesticide free, but if we can't, what we suggest that you do is just make sure that if you can't peel a fruit or a vegetable, that you soak your non-peeled fruit and vegetables in warm water with a tablespoon of bicarb for around 10 to 20 minutes before you eat them or before you cook them. And what this will do is make sure that the pesticides are removed. Okay, so just make sure that you rinse them after you've finished soaking. Now, the second thing when we talk about diet, when we're talking about eating clean, eating whole, and eating organic, is variety. Now, in traditional Chinese medicine, we believe in eating a wide variety of tasty, fresh foods in season. And this includes healthy protein, right? It doesn't matter whether that protein is meat sourced or vegetable sourced. We are always suggesting that we eat a wide variety of foods. We also believe in traditional Chinese medicine that eating cold foods can actually hinder our fertility, right? And this is because when we're putting cold foods into the body, it actually not only slows down our metabolism and our digestion, but it slows down the blood flow in that area, and that can impact the uterus, which is very, very close by. It can also create a bit of damp in the body, right, which is not what we want for the healthy metabolism of fluids and the healthy movement of blood. So we generally tend to tell people who are trying to conceive to reduce the amount of dairy and sugar in their diet. So this brings me back to the question that Diane asked, which is, do we have to be dairy or gluten-free? We don't have to be dairy and gluten-free, but what we know is, obviously, if we're lactose intolerant or we're gluten intolerant, it's obviously very important to be, dairy and gluten-free. But there are some, things about dairy which are obviously quite helpful. I mean, dairy is, high in calcium, and it's a good protein. The problem is that too much dairy in Chinese medicine creates damp in the body. Now, damp is just where the body's really, really struggling to metabolize fluids and things kind of become sluggish. So we also know that too much dairy and too much gluten are inflammatory for the body. So our suggestion is always to say, if you're not intolerant to dairy or you're not intolerant to gluten, is to rather just be mindful of how much dairy and how much gluten you actually take in. So in small amounts, it's absolutely fine, but we certainly suggest reducing, particularly the dairy, and cutting it out altogether if it's easy enough for you, if you can find alternatives. Hi, Roxy. Nice to have you on, my love. So I hope that's answered your question, Diane, around the dairy and the gluten. And if it hasn't, let me know. And we'll go into a little bit more detail. Now, for those of you who have a weak stomach and spleen, who have a weak digestive system, you probably know who you are, right? I'm one of them. If you don't know and you're not sure, you can always ask your acupuncturist. We definitely would say it's probably better to really reduce your dairy and reduce the amount of sugar, because it creates damp, and we really don't want the body to to produce too much damp, because it creates this kind of sluggish environment for the body. All right. So we've talked about, eating clean, eating organic, eating whole foods. We also suggest in traditional Chinese medicine that it's really important for you to eat in a relaxed manner. And the reason for this is because what we know from studies is that we lose about 60 to 70% of our digestive capacity when we don't eat slowly and in the relaxation response, and when we don't eat with our minds, in other words, in a mindful way. So mindful eating is really, really important, and I'm not going to go into that today. I could do a whole session on mindful eating. It's such a beautiful topic, and there's a lot of research behind mindful eating. But really, just for you guys to know that it is important to eat in a relaxed manner. Right? It's really, really important for you to practice mindful eating and to focus on your food, because it allows us to digest and metabolize that food better, and that creates a great environment for blood to flow more easily around there, and obviously that impacts the uterus as well because of the proximity of it. All right, so what type of foods am I talking about when I say eating whole? Just think of lots of fiber-rich veggies, fresh fruits and grains. Literally, it's the more colorful the plate, the greater the range of vitamins and minerals you'll be getting, right? So think, red capsicum, orange carrot, green spinach, green broccoli, and then if you're a meat eater, eating really good quality meat, 2 to 3 times a week. If not, then focusing on really good quality, healthy protein. But it's really about the quality of the food and about the variety of the food, and making sure that it's whole and unprocessed. And I always say to people, look at making sure that 80% of the time you're eating as much plant-based as you can. Because if you can go with focusing on that 80%, the other 20% doesn't, I wouldn't say it doesn't matter, but what happens is that 80%, the body's getting what it needs. It's getting the nutrients it needs. It's getting, it's taking what it needs from that 80% food, and therefore we don't have to worry as much about the other 20%. It's almost as if you've really hit the nail on the head. You've kind of got it going there. All right, so I hope that answers your question. I'm just going to go back quickly to the comments and see, and just make sure that I answered that question. Dan said that's great. Okay, perfect. Hi, Amy. Okay, Diane, if we have time today, I'll talk a little bit more about mindful eating. Otherwise, what I'll do is I'll set up a separate session for that. And I'll teach you guys how to do it, why it's important. And what you'll find with the mindful eating is when you start focusing on mindful eating, it's absolutely amazing how it changes the way you digest the food. It changes the way you feel after you've eaten. There's so much about mindful eating, and people start to lose weight. There's a lot that goes with mindful eating. So if you like, we can set up a whole separate session on mindful eating, and we can talk about that for a good 20 minutes or 30 minutes or so. All right, beautiful. All right, so number 2, of 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility is to check for nutritional deficiencies. Now, you guys may think, well, you know, I'm not necessarily at the beginning of my fertility journey and I'm kind of halfway in. It doesn't matter whether you're at the beginning or you're somewhere in between. It's really important that you go to a practitioner, whether it's your GP or your naturopath, who can run some blood tests and check if there's anything that your body may require more of. Because what we know is that with fertility, things like folic acid and other B vitamins, vitamin C, vitamin D, omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants such as CoQ10, and then obviously some of the minerals like zinc and iron and iodine, those are really important for fertility. And if we don't have enough of them, they could be hindering our chances of conceiving. So it's really, really important that we go and get these checked out. And if we're fine, we're fine. But if we're not, then obviously we can supplement in such a way that it can make sure that our levels come up to, you know, to a level that they need to be. So if you aren't sure of who to see for this sort of thing, if you don't have a good GP, or if you need any suggestions, and sometimes, to be honest, GPs may not be able to run the full raft of tests. So I actually think that seeing a naturopath is probably the best thing for you, or an integrative medicine practitioner. But if you're not sure of who to see for this sort of thing, or if you need any suggestions of practitioners in your area, please let us know and we can refer you. We can certainly find somebody for you. We've got a whole lot of practitioners that we work with who are fantastic, and we can do that for you. All right, so we've talked about number 1, diet. We've talked about number 2, checking for nutritional deficiencies and making sure that you're not just taking vitamin D and vitamin C or whatever it happens to be. You actually checked your levels and making sure they're up to what they should be. Number 3 of 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility is to reduce the toxicity in your environment. Now, why do we need to reduce the toxicity in our environment if we're trying to conceive? Well, mainly this is because chemicals in the environment like pesticides, insecticides, household cleaners, and industry byproducts have been shown to reduce egg viability. And they've also been shown to deplete follicle numbers and to damage sperm, and even to reduce IVF success rates. For example, there was a study of Danish greenhouse workers that found that there was an unexpectedly high sperm count among the organic farmers, which was twice as high than those who were blue-collar workers, right? So they looked at the blue-collar workers versus the organic farmers. And what it suggests is that consuming organically grown foods can actually enhance our fertility. And there was another study published in the American Journal of Industrial Medicine, which found that men that were experiencing infertility were actually found to be employed in agriculture and pesticide-related jobs, right? And this was 10 times more often, right? So what they were really finding is that those men that had been exposed to a lot of pesticides or industry byproducts were far more likely to experience fertility problems, right? And this is the same for women. We also know that, it's also been found that miscarriage increases in women by 2 to 1, right? By 2.1 to and above after exposure to chemical solvents such as dry cleaning agents, paint thinners, and paint strippers. So what we suggest is that if you're trying to conceive, both the man and the woman will avoid things like dry cleaning agents, like paint thinners and paint strippers, right? Very, very important. But there are other ways that we can actually go about reducing the toxicity in our environment without it feeling like an insurmountable task. Because for a lot of us, it kind of feels like, well, I live in an environment where I'm exposed to toxicity all the time. How do I go about doing it? Well, the obvious ones really are to avoid exposures to chemicals, things like paint or paint thinners, etc. Not go and paint your new living room because you've done a renovation. But we can also start with our own household and personal products. And the great news is that there's a really good selection of clean household and personal products that are out there now, right? Even when I arrived in Australia like 10 years ago and looked in Woolies and Coles, I found that there wasn't that much, but there's really been a huge increase, particularly in the last 5 years, in the number of products and brands that are in this range. If changing all of your personal products and your household products feels like a big step change, then what I always suggest to people is that they just take their time. right? Use up what you currently have, and then slowly start testing out and adding in new, new stuff. Start getting rid of all the old stuff and bringing in the new, and it can really make a huge difference to the toxicity levels in your body. All right. So number 4 of 6 ways to optimize your fertility is to reduce alcohol and caffeine. Now, this is a really, really hot topic, and Diane, I'm going to talk about decaf in a moment, but we're just going to talk a little bit about alcohol and caffeine, because so many of us, and I know that at one point I also fell into this particular basket, but so many of us feel like coffee and alcohol are so much part of who we are, because particularly in Sydney with the coffee culture, and with the culture of drinking that we live in, we almost feel like, alcohol and coffee give us a lot of pleasure, which they do. It's also that we associate, drinking coffee and drinking alcohol with connection. That's what it's become for us. But the problem here is that high caffeine intake is actually associated with infertility and increased miscarriage rates. And we know that even moderate coffee drinking, in other words, kind of 1 to 3 cups a day, can actually reduce our fertility. So there are a few studies that highlight this, and I'm not going to go into a lot of detail around those. But I'll just share one of them with you. There was a 1992 study done of around 1,900 women in America by Yale University. And what they found was that the risk of not conceiving for 12 months was 55% higher for women drinking 1 cup of coffee per day, but it was 100% higher for women drinking 1 to 3 cups of coffee per day, right? And then I think it jumped up to like 176% higher for women drinking more than 3 cups per day, right? So that just kind of goes to show that coffee drinking can really make a big difference. Now, obviously, it's the caffeine in the coffee, which is what they've been looking at in this study, for example. But what I will say about decaf is that, and to answer your question, Diane, is that in traditional Chinese medicine, we're concerned about coffee because it creates a lot of heat in the body, and heat dries the body fluids. And if you've got a hot constitution already, if you're somebody who experiences heat, you run more hot than cold, you might wake up at night feeling a bit hot at times, or maybe even sweaty, you feel thirsty a lot, then you're going to want to avoid coffee altogether. The problem with alcohol and coffee is they put heat back into the body and they dry the bodily fluids out. And so that can impact our fertility. Now, in Chinese medicine, unfortunately, decaf also creates heat in the body. Not to the same degree as a full strength coffee. It's much milder. So what we would always say is decaf is fine if you don't have a hot constitution. Yeah. But if you're somebody who has a hot constitution, then we're going to suggest that you stay away from all coffee, whether it's caffeinated or decaffeinated. So I hope that answers your question. And I think if you really love the coffee because it there's a sense of pleasure and there's a sense of connection, then looking for healthier options like chai tea or a herbal tea, or when it comes to alcohol, for example, because alcohol also creates heat in the body, then an alcohol-free version. And there are lots of alcohol-free wines and spirits in the supermarkets these days. There's lots of options of different herbal teas and different kinds of chais and things you can try. So if you love the warm drink or you love the alcoholic beverage, go and look for options. There are options out there for you. All right. So we've talked about number 4, reducing your amount of alcohol and coffee. Number 5 of 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility is to ensure that you get good quality sleep. Now, if you had to rate your sleep out of 10, right? And if 10 is the best night's sleep ever and 1 was, I hardly slept last night or had a very restless night, I'd love to know where your sleep would be. So let me know in the comments box, where is your sleep at the moment, right? If 10 is the best and 0 is really not sleeping at all. Now, what you may or may not realize is that the quality and quantity of your sleep influences not only the sex hormones in your body, right? But for men, it influences sperm production. For women, it influences our ovulation. It influences immune factors. It influences our mood. It influences our weight and our weight gain or weight loss. It influences our stress levels. It influences our length of life, and of course our stamina. So we always suggest that 8 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep is really ideal. Okay, now I know that there are different things that we kind of hear out, some people say, oh, I can survive it on 6 hours. And some people say, well, I can survive on, 5 hours or 4 hours. But the National Sleep Foundation says that 70% of us in the developed world don't actually get enough sleep. And their guidelines are 8 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep per night, right? Sleep is really integral. It's like, for me, I always talk about it being one of the pillars of, of good health. So it's really important for our reproductive health that we make sure that we're getting enough sleep and then we're getting good quality sleep. And if you're struggling with sleep, come and talk to one of us, put it out into the group, and we'll chat about how we can help you to sleep. Acupuncture is brilliant for helping with sleep, but there are lots of other ways that we can help you, and we're going to do a whole session on sleep in a few weeks' time as well, to talk about how we can help you to to sleep better. All right. Hi, Donna. So good to see you. Diane says, are there any particular brands you could recommend? Diane, I'm not sure which brands of what. If you let me know, and then I'll see if I can supply you with that. And then Diane said, I'm usually cold more than hot. What could I drink instead? So I think all I said is, if you're more cold than hot, then decaf is probably fine for you. Obviously, just making sure that you're getting a really good quality organic decaf that hasn't had chemicals used to extract it, is really, really important. So you can drink, if you've got more of a cold constitution, having a cup of tea is not a problem. I would look at some really good quality organic chai teas, look at different herbal teas that you like. And we can, as I say, we can pop that out into the group and ask, and we can certainly get everybody to contribute around different brands, of different teas and potentially decafs for you. All right. Okay, so I know that I can see that I'm pushing on for time here, and I've already been on for 25 minutes. So I want to come on to our last section in this, which is number 6 of 6 simple ways to optimize your fertility, is acupuncture. Now, I know that a lot of you who are in this group have had acupuncture at some point, or you may not have, and that's okay. And I'm not going to harp on about the benefits of acupuncture, but what I will say to you is that acupuncture has been found in certain clinical studies. The results are that it may be beneficial in not only increasing our chances of conception, but increasing microcirculation to the ovaries, microcirculation to the endometrial lining, reducing our stress, and regulating our hormones. At our clinics, for example, we use different protocols and point selections at different times within the cycle. And of course, depending on what, whatever the patient presents with, we are focusing on all of those things that I talked about: microcirculation to the ovaries, microcirculation to the endometrial lining, regulation of hormones, reducing stress. All those things are really, really important. So if you've got any questions around acupuncture and how acupuncture may be able to help with your fertility, let us know. We're going to be talking about it as we go through each week. There'll be reference to it. But if you need anything more around acupuncture, let us know, and we can supply you that. It's really, really helpful, for fertility. All right, so let's recap quickly the 6 simple ways to optimize our fertility. Number 1 is to eat clean and to eat whole. Number 2 is to check for your nutritional deficiencies. Don't just take supplements, actually go and make sure that you check through a blood test, what your nutritional deficiencies might be. Number 3 is to reduce the toxicity in your environment, and that's not just from your personal products, but also in terms of your household products as well, and obviously the food and the drinks that we take into our body as well. Number 4 is to reduce alcohol and caffeine, or cut them out altogether if it's possible for you. Number 5 is to focus on good quality sleep. And number 6 is to consider having acupuncture, and you can talk to your practitioner about how many times you might need to have that, or what the treatment protocol might look like. Now, if you implement these 6 simple things, you're actually going to go a long way to really optimizing your fertility, because even the small things make a difference. They make a big difference, right? We know from research that everything that I've kind of talked about today has an impact on fertility. So it's really important that even if you couldn't do all 6 and you felt like it was too much, that you just picked 2 that felt that were workable for you, and you kind of went from there. So that's it for today in terms of our session. Diane said cleaning products, skincare, and deodorant, etc. Yes. There are actually quite a few brands out there, and I think the important thing, Diane, is to look and see, that they don't have any harmful products in them. But maybe what we can do is we can start a little conversation in the group, and we can tell you what to look out for in terms of the cleaning products, and all the personal products. Maybe if you don't mind just asking a question in the group, because I don't want to run over time today. Ask a question in the group and I'll make sure that we contribute and answer any questions that you have around that particular thing. So that's it for today. I hope that this session has been helpful and informative. I'm sorry that it has run a little bit late today and that I had technical issues, which meant that I've had to kind of rush through some of the topics a little bit faster than I normally would. But if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask them in the group. I look forward to seeing your questions, Diane, and to answering them for you. And if you're on the recording, please also, say hi in the comments box. Let us know if you've got any questions from the session, or just any comments or anything you'd like to add, anything in terms of your own experiences. If you've got anything that you would like to contribute on any of these topics that's been helpful for you, please let us know. That's what this community is all about. It's all about sharing information. So you're going to see Amy next week, and she'll let you know later this week what that topic is going to be that she's going to talk about. And that is it for today. All right, I'm signing off now. Bye for now. See you all soon.